signature gear. It's been around for presumably as long as there has been electric guitars, whether you're talking about the Les Paul. That actually happens to be somebody's name, just not an arbitrary name for an instrument. Whether you're talking about, I don't know, the Slash signature Marshall, whether you're talking about, I'm trying to think of what would have been an early artist endorsed pedal. Can you think of like any really early artist series pedal? I'm trying to think of like what would have been
only early artists that use a particular pedal and were known for it. But I'm trying to think of ones that had their name on it. Obviously,
who would have been a signature artist?
Of
like
who's Mr. Miata? It's kind of what we're looking for, but in the guitar world, right? Like early days.
By like early days, it would have been like
who hitched their horse,
a signature guitar cable, since so many of them just went directly into the amp.
Well, the one that I'm thinking of that's not a guitar player is Clyde McCoy with the wah-wah, but he was a trumpet player.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so I could think of that as being an early signature guitar pedal, or that what became a guitar pedal but was not, used on a guitar instrument. But I think that today we'll have sort of an interesting conversation because I have an opinion on signature gear as somebody who's manufacturing pedals.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we all have opinions on signature gear from the perspective of being guitar players and consumers of this stuff. Because not only, do we all make or offer some sort of service that's adjacent to guitar pedals or musical instruments, but we also buy these things. We see the same marketing that you see on Instagram and TikTok and fill in the blank places where you might find out information about gear. And we're equally as susceptible to, being interested in those new products. And so I'm curious, just so we kind of give the listener a starting place of kind of where we are individually as believers or disbelievers in the idea of signature gear, where we stand on it. What do we think? Brian, start us off. What's your sort of foundational opinion as it relates to artist endorsed products? Do you endorse it?
Well, I would say the thing with artists, not artists, like anyone can endorse. Now, I play this pedal. I mean, there's been so many pedals when I started playing that I bought because of Nigel Hendroff. We've talked about many times. He didn't even endorse those pedals. He just used them. So it was like, oh, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. But actively seeing a lot of these people come out with signature compressors, signature overdrives, many versions of that overdrive, like all these different types of pedals. These like Andy Timmons, for instance. Obviously, Andy has a bunch of signature pedals. I've done all of Andy's boards for the past 6 years, so I've seen all of his signature pedals, and he uses all of them, which is really cool to see. It's not one of those like, "Hey, can we slap your name on a thing?" Like, he actually uses them. But I think when it comes to signature pedals in a nutshell, and I'll pass it on to Grant, it's their vision for their tone. It's their vision for their sound that they're wanting. So if you're going and buying a signature pedal trying to sound just like Andy Timmons, you're not going to sound just like Andy Timmons. You'll sound like yourself, but have a little bit of Andy Timmons like vibe from it. So that's my kind of 2 cents with signature pedals. I think they're cool. I just think a lot of those times that like those artists they endorse or they have a signature pedal, people will think, oh, I'm going to sound just like him. It's not going to be true. Personally, I think you'll get close to it, but I could be wrong.
I want to know though, Brian, where do you personally stand as a guitar player?
Okay.
Taking off your rig builder hat and you're just Brian the guitar player. Where do you stand personally? When you see a signature piece of gear, are you like, I'm attracted to that because I like this player and I want to have that sound? Or are you like, I don't like there being an identity attached to this particular product?
I don't really care when it comes to the signature stuff personally. Like, if it comes out and I like how it sounds, like I've bought pedals before where people are like, oh, it's a signature this. I'm like, I don't care. They even signed it. I don't I don't care. Like I don't keep boxes for pedals. That's how I feel about it. Like I just like it doesn't bother me. Is I want it to sound good for what I want it to do. So signature pedals for me, if it fits what I need, then awesome. Otherwise, like when something comes out, I'm not like selling off my cat and my 2 dogs and my left shoe to buy that signature pedal. Like it's just not gonna happen. So yeah.
That was you on Craigslist, just selling the left shoe.
That was me. Just
okay.
The left shoe. I have a lot of rights.
Okay. I thought that might have been code for something else. Grant, what about you?
Well, there's a total side here, but as
shoe.
soon as this shows the influence or the people that influence me, as soon as Brian said he doesn't have the boxes for his pedals, instantaneously like, he has the box from the JHS show. You know how whenever he says he has the original box and they play that little funny clip.
Yes.
That's just my little side. Signature pedals, if I'm going to be totally honest, this is kind of like the other week when we were talking about mini pedals. I am signature gear averse, but I don't have a good reason for it. And I think it's because if I was to try and figure out why, I typically would not go for signature gear because the cynic in me, I try and be a positive guy on this show. The cynic in me is like, I initially think cash grab. And that is not fair. A lot of companies, artists, even Andy was on, a few weeks back, and he actually uses the gear. And I think if I know, let's say, I brought up before the show, John Mayer and his 2-rock signature. Like that is not a cheap piece of gear. It is not a dumbed down version. I would assume, I could be wrong, but it's not a dumbed down version of what John actually uses on tour. Presumably it is the amp that he uses on tour or an amp that he used at one time on tour. Whereas if I see, the company, let's say Fender does a custom shop version of a Mayer Strat, and then they sell a very simplified version of that Strat as a Mayer Strat, I am not attracted to that dumbed down version at all. And I think, especially for larger companies where the bottom line really is, and I'm not saying this is bad, but the bottom line, really is the first consideration, because it has to be. I am just not attracted to those pieces of gear. If I know it is a part for part replica of what the artist is using on stage, an amp, a guitar, pedals, even then probably not as much. I don't care as much about pedals for signature gear. But for guitars and amps, I would consider it, but I am not looking for the signature gear to get someone's sound as a guitar player. I hesitate to call myself a guitar player because I'm not good at guitar, but as someone that just appreciates gear and I love playing guitar for fun, signature gear doesn't really do it for me. If one piece was to do it for me, and then I'll stop talking, it would be an amp. I just have a thing for amps, and it, like a John Mayer or a Landreth 2-rock or whatever it might be, like they're just gorgeous amps. And the fact that I know Joey uses his signature amp on tour it makes it a bit more attractive to me.
So would you say then that John Mayer PRS, whether then they came out with the SE, like a lower version of it?
Not interested. No.
Yeah.
But if I was going to buy a guitar, it probably wouldn't be like, I love PRS, the feel, how they make, like they're beautiful instruments. But if I was going to go out and buy a guitar, like it would probably be a Fender or a Gretsch or something. Like my first pick isn't a PRS to begin with. So I think that one's probably not a fair comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm not interested in a dumbed down version or a simplified, dumbed down is not fair, a simplified lower cost version of the real thing. If I'm going to buy a signature piece of gear, I want it to be what the artist actually uses on tour, in the studio, whatever it might be. What about you, Mason?
So a few things, actually, let me answer this and then let me tell you a few other things that came up. Yeah. So where I stand with signature gear is I'm sort of in Brian's camp. I don't really care if it has somebody's name on it, if it works for the thing that I'm doing. So I'm sort of impartial and have no reservations about using something that has somebody's name on it, whether it's a guitar, whether it's an amp, whether it's a pedal. if it does the thing that I want it to do, and it fulfills a need, I'm happy. And I don't really care about how it looks. I don't really care about the name, even if it's a dissimilar style that I play, and it just happens to work for what I'm doing. That's fantastic for me.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that I go out seeking those particular instruments, because I've sort of tempered the understanding that just because I like John Mayer or just because I like Joey Landreth, the idea of having their product in the form of a guitar, in the form of an amp, or whatever it may be, stylistically, unless I'm in a John Mayer cover band or a Joey Landreth cover band, the need to really replicate that sound identically is probably not something I'll ever be called for,
Mm-hmm.
And if they really need that, they'll call Joey Landreth. But what this has brought up for me is in some of the conversation here is a few different ideas around sort of signature gear, and I think maybe some of the different mindsets that are seen in the marketplace. I think Grant mentioned the idea of a cash grab, and I think that that's not an uncommon perception that other players have about this, especially people that are sort of serial endorsees or serial signature product people. And on one hand, I feel like, unless you're at the top level, unless you're on the John Mayer level, you need to have multiple streams of income as a musician. And you need to be able to get money through touring. You need to at least attempt to get money through record sales, although that seems to be a more and more difficult thing. But another way to get money is through endorsements. And a lot of these companies, whether it be pedal or amplifier or guitar, they will often pay artists to represent their brands, to do clinics, to be ambassadors for them. And another way that they can sort of get mailbox money, and by that I just mean sort of money that they get in their sleep product sell, and they get a check every month or whatever arrangement they have, every quarter, every 6 months, whatever it may be. And this is just another way for them to earn money. And so should we fault artists for doing that, for trying to monetize products that they use, and that can be totally honest, and that the products that they're using are genuinely what they use. And so I kind of understand that. I would just say, I would wonder from the perspective of a fan, and I'm curious what your perspectives are. When you see somebody that's, let's say, a serial endorser of products, even if they genuinely use them, do you feel like it dilutes sort of the trustworthiness of, like, do we really need do we need everything on a pedal board to be signature? Does it all have to be signature? I'll give you another perspective in a minute from a perspective of a manufacturer in signature gear, but I'm just curious, does it affect your perception of the artists if like 50% of what's on their board is signature gear, or 80%? Like, do you feel like it's disingenuous? Or are you like, yeah, they got to make their money? Like, what's your feeling on that?
I think
I think Grant's gonna go first.
All right, Grant, go take us away.
If you have a relationship with that artist, it's much harder once you know the backstory, playing devil's advocate a bit, to fault them for it. Because then you know why, you know the relationship, sure. You know that they actually potentially really love the gear. It's like, well, okay, yeah, no, I understand that. That makes sense. All the power to you. But then I think if you don't have the relationship, if you're fully separated from that artist and you don't know any of the backstory and you are an outside observer, I would absolutely say, it dilutes it. And I find it much easier to think not so positive thoughts towards their relationship to music, the industry. You know what I mean? Like, I think I can not think too highly of that artist if it just looks like anything and again, this is the cynical side, anything they can get their name on, they will put it on if they can get a buck. But I cannot also say if I was that guitar player that I wouldn't do the same thing. I've never had that opportunity. It's not something that I can say that I have turned down my artist endorsements because of my high moral code, if that's what we want to go, like if that's where we want to take it. I might be that person, and who knows? There's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. But I think from an outside observer, the more I see, and you see this on Instagram, like it feels like some guys every other week they're posting about a new endorsement. Like, oh, come on, like just play some music and and just get on with it. But you're absolutely right. Artists need to make money in new ways because it is not like it was 20 years ago. Things have changed, and you have to get creative with where you make your money. So I think all of that to say, I don't think it's easy to give a black and white answer, but it's a little bit frustrating, I think, from my perspective, when artists put their name on just about everything they can.
So I have a not reverse opinion about that. I agree completely with what Grant was saying. No, but it's funny. It's in a different way.
Okay.
What was the term you used? Is it feel like distasteful when 80% of the board is? How did you phrase it?
Yeah, I think that's a nice.
I think I used the word disingenuous.
Disingenuous,
yeah.
great.
Nice.
I'll use that. I think it's more disingenuous when the artist has 5 or 6 signature pedals and they don't even use them.
Yeah.
Personally, it's like, get this drive, get this delay, and then their board, it's like, oh, I'm using a multi-effects
and that happens quite a bit. I can tell you, as somebody who's built a lot of celebrity boards that have endorsement pedals on them, and then I'm cleaning the pedals or removing the batteries from them, and I'm looking at what's in there, and that doesn't look anything like the one that I've seen before.
Yeah. Well, and that's
like this one didn't have NOS, transistors in it, and
oh my gosh. Oh, that's
funnier. Not uncommon.
Yeah. See, that's my pet peeve, I guess you could say, of signature pedals, is when an artist will push stuff. I have 2 pet peeves about that kind of stuff. I have when artists, what is it? You know what I mean? I almost said artisan because that's a type of bread. But when artists promote products just because they're free, that's another thing too. Like just because it's like, yeah, I'll promote it for you, but you're gonna give it to me for free, that kind of stuff. But that's a whole separate. That's not a signature conversation. But yeah, when they promote a super new hot delay pedal or something that they've done, their dual compressor or whatever it is, and I'm like, great, what compressor are you using? Oh, I'm not using a compressor. Well, what about your signature compressor? Oh yeah. I'm just like, I'll never say who it was, but I was just like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting. Okay, like, well, we sold them all. I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem honest, but whatever. So that's mine. That's my take on it. I agree everything what Grant said, but I also feel like there's another side of where they have signature pedals and they don't even use them. That feels even more of a cash grab because it's like, yeah, throw my name on it, just give me money for it, kind of thing, like that kind of thing. That's me.
I think we would also, and we aren't going to get into this in this podcast, but the thing that keeps coming to mind in terms of, I think, my issue with this, which is similar to, like, I think, Brian, you said it better than I did, but I think endorsing products that you don't actually believe in is my biggest issue. And our industry, the music industry, is rife with this stuff. When you think about all of the YouTube endorsement videos, like, here's $500, talk really nicely about this new product I just made, whether you like it or not, it does not matter. Mm-hmm. But make a great video, tell everyone how much you love it, don't talk about the things you don't love, and then you'll get paid. Like, that, I think, is just as frustrating for me when people are being paid to endorse products that they would never touch in a million years, but they look as hard as they can, find some things they like and talk about it, and then move on to the next video. I think that is just as disingenuous, dishonest, frustrating from the consumer point of view. And I think just carries a lot of parallels. So I think, hearing, Brian, you talking about that kind of, I think, clarifies my thoughts a little bit. So I appreciate your thoughts there. But I think it's when they're being truly dishonest about their endorsement, and it really does come down to to dollars and cents. Now you have just broken trust with your audience, and you're leading them a direction that you wouldn't go yourself. And I find that quite frustrating.
What about endorsing a product that you do use, but let's say is not your signature sound? Because I've noticed this somewhat recently, where you'll see a endorsement product that is for a prominent artist, but that product has nothing to do with any sound that anybody recognizes them for. This isn't the product, but it would be like if Carlos Santana came out with a signature flanger. Nobody knows Carlos Santana for his flanger sound, but he has a signature flanger.
I'd be skeptical off the bat.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's like a metal band coming out with a big ambient reverb patch that, like, it's like Metallica having, like, we have this big ambient reverb, and it's like, okay, like, it's like you just said, it's not. I would be very skeptical at that point. Like, it's just like, oh wow, oh, I've never heard that, but okay, I'd be skeptical.
Could be called the Metalliverb or the Plate-talica.
And maybe they do big reverbs. I don't know. I mean, they do a lot of great stuff. But
no, I'd be skeptical as well.
I would be very skeptical.
Does this signature flanger actually end up on Santana's board for any length of time?
In this hypothetical world, let's say yes. I also should shout out Brian's youth group metal band that does all Metallica covers, Pastor of Muppets. Yes. That's pretty. It's pretty great.
Pastor of Muppets, nicely done.
Yeah.
Touche, Mason.
One. I like that one.
I have to say, as a side here, your jokes have only gotten better since becoming a father.
Honestly, well, thank you.
Coincidence?
Thank you,
I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But. I think I would be very skeptical. If it actually ended up on their board, maybe you see it on a new album, that's a different thing. Like, you can actually hear this new effect, even if they weren't known for it in the past, but they start adopting it. Sure. But I think if it is coming across as a, I'm going to be seen with this product for the next 3 months and then it all but vanishes, then I think it's a very similar deal of, just don't endorse stuff you don't actually believe in. Which is easier said than done when there's money on the table. I understand. But I think that's the whole building of trust type thing. I love and hate the example of, John Mayer making it very difficult to find out what is on his pedal board.
I love
and
this.
I can only assume because of this reason of he doesn't want to, potentially inflate things. Maybe he likes keeping it a bit of a secret, but he might have a fuzz on his board for one show. It's like, no, don't like it. But that one show could inflate that brand for a little, short amount of time. And it might not be an endorsement he actually wants to be behind. I'm assuming a lot by saying all of this, but sure. I have a love-hate relationship with him not making it obvious. He could endorse way more stuff, make way more money on endorsements than he does with his influence. But,
well, I think just him using things is sufficient, but it seems like the marketplace, as far as his gear is concerned, is pretty self-regulatory. Like the super fans are always in the know, and they can always discover what it is. And because there's just so many eyes on, and somebody's like, wait, I recognize that knob spacing. I have that pedal. It's fill in the blank. And I think that mostly people tend to wait, or the real fans tend to wait until they see it used in a recurring scenario before they're like, okay, this is now the new mainstay on his pedal board, or whatever it ends up being. Yeah.
Have you seen his pedal drawers? I don't think there's any I think there's a couple pedals, and I remember when we were talking with, what was his name? He was the John Mayer guy. The expert.
Justin Jeske.
Yeah. Like him, he was talking about just all the different stuff. I think it's fun, seeing when stuff, because it drives people crazy. And there's part of me that when I had the opportunity to go and sit at sound check for his concerts, I was like, what? And they're like, no photos, don't take any photos or any videos during sound check. So I'm trying to see what he's using just because I'm curious. But yeah, no, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I want to hand it off to Mason, but first I want to go through a couple of the sponsors that make this podcast possible. The first one you may recognize on screen, as we've already seen in this podcast, although it may look a little different than the Guitar Sanctuary that you know and love. Brian is out in the back room. I think he might be in a bit of a timeout. I'm not sure what's going on there. But either way, Brian is at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. The Guitar Sanctuary is one of our favorite guitar shops, although I have to admit, from being up here in Vancouver, I have never physically been to the Guitar Sanctuary. I'm trying to change that this year, and I'm trying to show up at the Guitar Sanctuary later this year. But I've dealt with the other Brian, owner Brian. There's Brian Meter and Brian Omilion. I've dealt with Brian Meter quite a lot, and a big fan of the Guitar Sanctuary. A lot of the gear that we talk about on the podcast can be purchased at the Guitar Sanctuary or theguitarsanctuary.com. If you're a fan of being online, the Guitar Sanctuary is the place to go. So check it out. Once you get that gear, Brian can hook you up with a setup. You guys can check out some of the signature gear they have there. Andy Timmons is a frequent solicitor, is that the right word, of the Guitar Sanctuary? And so check it out, theguitarsanctuary.com. I also want to talk to you guys about Neural DSP. Neural does a whole suite of plugins, and they are sweet. They recently did a Morgan amp plugin that you can add into your setup and into your DAW. They also are obviously the makers of the Quad Cortex, which is an incredible multi-effect amp and cab sim, route things any way you want type of unit, and it is the best one on the market. The Quad Cortex is definitely something to check out. You guys also can use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, to get 30% off of all of the Quad Cortex, all of Neural's plugins, provided that they are 90 days old or older. So check them out, neuraldsp.com. And you can also now use Cortex Control, which is the Quad Cortex computer editor. So you can actually go even deeper on your edits for Quad Cortex. That is at neuraldsp.com. Mason, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. The next thing I think that's interesting about certain signature gear that I actually have a lot of respect for, and I actually think strategically, I think heads off a lot of the common issues. That being that I think the biggest challenge with signature gear is that once it's released and you've saturated the fan base of that particular artist, it's really hard to maintain relevancy. And that's primarily because there's probably not new fans coming in droves to that particular artist by the time that they're at the point where they can get a signature product for themselves. Mm-hmm. And then of those fans, how many of them are guitar players? And of those guitar players, how many of them are pedal buyers? Like, it just gets reduced further and further to a kind of a more concentrated group. I think what companies like PRS have done, and I'm thinking in terms of the Silver Sky and the Mark Lettieri like Fiore, where they're not necessarily branded with a John Mayer signature, where it's like super heavily branded as John Mayer or super heavily branded as Mark Lettieri. Like, of course, Mark Lettieri uses it. He was behind the design. He was the person that's launching it and helping doing ongoing and sustained marketing for it. But it's not very obvious that it is a signature product. Like, it's just a great product that's well built, that has the sensibilities of that artist, but is not in your face about the fact that it is a signature piece of gear.
Yeah.
I think that strategically, from a brand perspective, as a manufacturer perspective, is really smart, because it allows you to enroll those people that are kind of like on the fence about whether they would use a Silver Sky because they're not fans of John Mayer, but they want something that is better built than maybe what the equivalent Fender custom shop would be for a lot less money.
Yeah.
And so they're willing to take that chance because they're like, well, I like PRS, I like Strats, but I'd have to spend $4,000 to get this quality for $2,500 or what, I forget what the Silver Sky costs. But I think that they're more willing to do that if it doesn't have John Mayer plastered all over the headstock or on the body or something like that.
Yeah.
Equally, with an artist like Mark Lettieri, who maybe is not as well known, I think that people see that guitar and like, this is great. This kind of looks like a Strat. It's a HSS platform. You know, it's got, you know, this really kind of cool like pickguardless design, and it's got a tremolo bar. It looks super versatile as, you know, a split coil. I think that equally people are more interested in trying out a guitar where ordinarily if they just heard somebody's name that they had no idea, they're like, why would I try this? I've never even heard of this player. Like, this is going to be a weird guitar. I think it's disarming at the same time to somebody who is a smaller artist who maybe somebody wouldn't have heard of, and people are now willing to give that guitar a try. I think this goes the same way with you know, pedals and amps and things like that, where maybe it isn't necessarily even an artist's signature, but an artist is paid because they use a product that doesn't have an artist name on it, but they use that product exclusively. And their promotion of the product, even though it doesn't have their name on it, is as valuable in some ways as there being their name on it. And it doesn't restrict you from just using that individual artist as the way to market this product. So you can have artists in 4 different genres that are your ambassadors of pedal or amp or guitar X. Mm-hmm. And they each will disseminate this message of, this product is great, I use this product, this is what makes it so special, to their individual audiences. But because it's not associated directly with any one of them by way of having their signature on the headstock or whatever it is, now you've increased the audience to a much wider and broader audience than you would if it had a name on it, even if it's the same exact product. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's sometimes in a problem with longevity as it relates to artist signature products for the most part. Now, I'm sure that there are examples of things that have transcended that, but usually it's with the really big names like, you know, Eric Clapton Stratocaster, Stevie Ray Vaughan Stratocaster. I mean, these are huge names, right? Yeah. And they can have staying power because they're still adopting new fans and old fans of their music that are interested in trying out these guitars. But I think for the most part, from a brand perspective, I think it makes way more sense to come up with brand ambassadors in different genres of music who can push that out, that don't have any necessarily signature association with any particular product, but are users of that product. Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
So while you were talking, I went over to the PRS website, and they have a tab for like PRS artists, and I'll share the screen just so you guys can also see what I was looking at. Right here, and I had the artists right here. So like these guys, like looking at, you know, they're all PRS guitars, obviously, but they look like different models, different pickup configurations. Like definitely, I saw this one was a very different pickup configuration. But I think that like seeing artists like that will not necessarily have their name on the guitar. Maybe some of them do. I could be wrong. I didn't deep dive enough into it. But seeing them, you know, promoting that brand because they just love it, because they are fans of it. That's what their go-to is and stuff. I think that's a really I think that, and tell me if I'm taking your question wrong. I think that's like a way better kind of platform when it comes to promoting gear and stuff, is like they're ambassadors of that gear because they just love it and they love playing it. You know, they could have been playing, you know, that guitar for 15 years, and then that company reached out to them like, oh, hey, you know, we'd love to work with you. We see that you've used it for a long time. Like those kind of companies. Am I responding to your question correctly?
I think the caveat that I would make, or the distinction I would make, is that let's say I'm a brand and I'm interested in a particular artist. Sure. And I approach the artist and I say, I want to make something for you. I want to make you a guitar. that has everything that you want, and I want to put your name on it, to help promote it. That's one approach. I think that has limitations as far as its longevity, because once again, once you've reached all the fans of that artist, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
I would say conversely, taking the approach of you have an artist that you really like.
Yeah.
And you come up to them and you say, "Hey, I want to make you something. It's not going to be a signature model, but I'll provide this to you, and then I'll give you this commission or this sort of stipend to stand behind it and be part of the face of this instrument." And do the same with that instrument to other artists in different genres. So now with this one product, you've identified key artists in certain genres of music that are influential in their genre, and they're all standing behind this instrument in supporting it. And I think that the structure of an artist deal is typically, that they're getting some percentage of the net of whatever the profits are. And so you could structure it similarly with all these artists, but it wouldn't have anybody's name on it. And I think that, again, longevity of the product, you can sell this thing now forever, and you don't have it tied to just this one artist in one genre. And then, you sell it well for a year or 2 years or whatever it is. And then you've kind of saturated at that point. And then you either have to release new stuff or whatever. And it seems to be diminishing returns after a certain point in time.
Yeah. I mean,
does that make sense?
Yeah. It's that. Thank you. That explains it. It's like them releasing a signature guitar with a person's name on it. They're basically putting that product in a bubble. But that bubble is, you can only go so far with the bubble, and then it's, that's all it's going to reach. I mean, there's only they're basically capping their reachability by not saying, but like Andy Timmons' overdrive pedal, like that is going to reach out to all of his sound of all of his people. But like someone in a completely different genre might not consider it because like, oh, that's not that type of sound. So like there's like, I think if there was, like you just said, they released like an overdrive, but then all those people endorsed it, you could see how cool it is that all these different people could use it, but they're not limited. They're not limiting it and conforming it to one certain type of sound or type of person or whatever. So thank you for explaining. What about you, Grant?
I mean, I'm just trying to do the numbers in my head, if I'm honest, of like I'd be curious how they structure those with multiple artists. Let's say you have 4 artists selling one guitar or endorsing one guitar. The more artists you have, the lower your profit margins are, which means the less sustainable it is, unless you just have a pool. 5% of all these sales get divvied up like a Spotify type thing or iTunes type thing. Like this is how much of revenue goes to artists. The more artists we get, the less each artist gets. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to figure that out, how that would work. But I totally understand. I think from a company perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think it's part of your sustained marketing budget. Because that's how you're treating it. Because a typical artist royalty in most of our industry is somewhere around the 7% range of net profits. And I've seen it done in different ways where it's like 7% of net or like or 7% of the list price or like 15% of net.
Yeah.
Usually it ends up in it, obviously it's variable because if you sell a product direct, the margin is different than if you sell it to a dealership, which is different than if you sell it to a distributor because the percentages that they take are different. And I've seen a lot of different structures in order to kind of get the artist taken care of. But typically, the artist is making, I don't know, $10+ per sale of like a guitar pedal that's say $200, something like that. But I think that the other advantage from a manufacturer standpoint in doing it in this way is not only does it give their product longevity, but I think it gives their artists, if they whatever agreement they've come up with, more consistent money. Because the challenge with artist products, if you're looking at a release, like the graph just goes straight up at first. and then it kind of
Yeah.
tapers off, and then it really starts to kind of dwindle after, depending on how big the artist is. This could be 6 months, this could be 2 years. The challenge is often it's difficult, and this has been reported to me by countless manufacturers, that it's really difficult to manage expectations when you're dealing in that, because people are like, well, my checks used to be 10 grand a month and now it's only, 1,500. Like, what the heck are you doing over there? And sometimes it's difficult to understand, and also, you may be dealing with the managers of these artists, in things like that as well. It's like, how do you set their expectations to know that, like, hey, like, we're not always going to be selling, the opening purchase orders that we're getting from our dealers are not going to be sustained like that forever. It's gonna, even with a regular products, sort of lifetime, you're gonna see a big ramp in the beginning, and it's gonna level off, and you're gonna kind of see, from there after a certain amount of time what the ongoing or sustained expectations would be for that. I think it's really it's much harder to manage that, I think, in the case of a direct artist endorsement. But I think that this leads me to kind of what you were talking about with Two Rock. And I think what they do, I think, is very respectable. And I think it's also very smart. And certainly they're not the only people that do this. But their way of doing artist endorsements is releasing products in a limited quantity. And so I think it gives, I think it erases the artist expectations not being met, because they have already decided on a finite number. There's 100 of these that will be made. This is whatever the agreement is between them and the artist. And also from the consumer standpoint, it's like, I either need to jump on this, or I'm probably not going to get one of these because there's only this amount. And so I think creating the scarcity at the same time is, I think, having a much better business arrangement, especially for, let's say, a smaller artist like a Joey Landreth, comparatively to, say, John Mayer. That it's a really great structure, and I think it creates a lot of demand, and I think that it also doesn't oversaturate the market where you're just trying to get this artist product in people's hands. They're creating a realistic number that they know that they can sell. And they're able to support the artist, they're able to support their business, and they're able to support their customers in knowing that they're getting sort of a unique piece that there's not a lot of. And I think that it was smart in the way that they did the John Mayer amp as well. I mean, I think at the time that it came out, and this is, almost 15 or 20 years ago at this point, I think it was like 7,900 or $8,000.
Wasn't cheap
at the time that it came out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this
And
would have been
they're way more than that, right?
now, yeah, I think there are 50,000 or more. But I think at the time, I think this would have been around 2005, something like that.
Is it the JM what? Is it like what?
Yeah, it's the Two Rock JM. I think that they were. I'm pretty sure they were $7,900,
Which
like
back in
79.99 or something.
That's expensive. Back in 05.
Yeah, especially then. I don't think there was anything that cost that much. But you can bet that they sold every one of those
instantly.
And I don't know how many were made, but I would imagine that it was in the low 100 count.
Oh.
And I think that's just. I think for a company that's a boutique company, that's a really smart way to do it. I could understand if a company like Marshall couldn't do that, or Fender couldn't do that, because it's just not their business model to create these small runs. But what is your thought on that? I know, Grant, you already kind of spoke to this. I think that for most boutique brands, having that sort of structure, if you're committed to doing an artist pedal, is a really smart way to do it. Or an artist amp or artist guitar.
Yeah.
I really like it. I mean, I wouldn't like it if I was the guy that was 101 on a run of 100 amps. Like, I just missed out. That would be frustrating. But I think what it also does from the business perspective, if you have all these people coming into, let's say, tworock.com, if that's their website, and only 100 of them are going to be able to get the amp, or from the dealers or whoever has the actual stock. But a lot of people are going to that site ready to buy an amp. They miss out, and now they're looking through the Two Rock lineup. Like, I think it's brilliant from a from a company point of view, sorry. And then from the customer point of view, they know next time Two Rock comes out with an artist's signature amp,
Don't wait.
I need to be quick, like, and I need to move, because with these ones from Two Rock, they usually sell out within a few days. And if you love the brand, if you love Two Rock, the scarcity is a powerful motivator, and it'll get you moving. But at the same time, you know that if you do get your hands on an amp that you truly love, maybe you really love this John Mayer signature model and you happen to get one, you are not, unless you're flipping gear, which I hope isn't the case, you are not going to let go. Your loyalty to that brand, your loyalty to that amp, how you treat it, the longevity is everything in my mind. Correct me if I'm missing an obvious thing here, but I think everyone just kind of benefits. Like, it's not going to be an amp that you are going to quickly get rid of. You aren't going to flippantly, it's like, oh yeah, I'm done with it, move on, knowing how hard you had to work to get it or what you had to sacrifice to get that thing. So I think the scarcity kind of plays well. And rather than, I can get serial number 10,000 of this piece of gear, and I can sell it and buy it back anytime I want because there's no end. I like the idea of a limited run, although there are frustrations if you can't get your hands on one, or you miss out on the Landreth one or the John Mayer one, and then you're paying double the price 2 weeks later if you really still want to get it. That obviously is not ideal, but by and large, I think the pros outweigh the cons for limited runs, especially if it's a piece of gear that the artist is actually using themselves. I think you feel more loyal to everybody, the company, the artists.
Yeah.
I think everyone wins.
Yeah.
Or
I agree.
people win. Sorry.
I think it's funny when you were talking about the next time you'll be ready, like, to buy the next signature. And in my mind, I had the dad joke. You'll be ready to rock.
Hey, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Yep.
Yeah. That was a joke.
I'll give that. That's 8 out of 10 for me.
That was my joke for today. I got a million jokes.
Nice.
I would say, I think it is a very smart process, like, idea to do that, limit to 100. It starts to feel weird when they do the 100, but then they, like, a couple months later, like, actually, we're gonna release 50 more, or we're gonna put it into production line. I've seen plenty of companies that did that, where they're like, only 500 of these pedals, say 500 pedals, and then all of a sudden, a couple months later, they're like, actually, it's going into full production because you loved it so much. It completely ruins the whole experience of, wow, like, I got 451. I got number 451. Person's like, I got 1,250. Like, it's like, okay, well, there's only supposed to be 500 of these. Like, I think that gets hard. I don't think that they would ever do a Jolie more than 100 of the Jolie amps. So that's really cool. Like, Two Rock sticks to their guns. They stick to 100 amps. They stick to how many John Mayer amps. Like, they're sticking to it no matter what. It's because they know that they can do it. I think it becomes, like, yet again, it feels like a cash grab when, after they've done that 500 run of that specialty pedal, they come out with another 500. Like, yes, you're going to get complaints from people that didn't get it. That's fine. That's how the business works, because that 500 people already bought it. But it was like when JHS did that boost pedal, that, like, teal green looking pedal with I don't know.
The treble booster.
The treble booster. They had a limited run of how many that they were going to do, and those people got it. If they were to come out again and be like, wow, we found another box, we're doing another this many, it would just feel weird.
The next release
dilutes
for sure.
Thank you. That's dilutes. That's a great word. I was trying to think of that word. Like, it would just be like, oh, okay. And I think it's more pedal companies are more susceptible. Sorry, tongue tie, to doing that over amp companies, because building an amp, as you know, I mean, Mason, you built amps. I don't know if Grant, if you ever built amps, but like, building an amp versus building a guitar pedal are significantly two different things. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
the
could
components are
probably
nuts.
build, I'm trying to think of, I would think at least maybe 20 pedals for the cost
Yeah.
of a nice hand-wired tube
Exactly.
amp, you know.
And that's like when I worked for Jackson Ampworks, the amount of components that went into that one amp versus what goes into a pedal is unreal. Like I watched the guys build it. So like it's more, yeah, seeing amp companies come out, like anytime I see a signature amp come out and it's a limited, I kind of have a feeling that they're going to stick to it because especially $10,000 amps, or however much it is. But yeah, so that's my thing. I love the idea that they put behind the 100 or 200 or whatever they're going to limit it, as long as they don't exceed it or extend it, because then, like you said, it dilutes. So. Before we continue, before I throw it back to Mason, I do want to talk about two of our other favorite sponsors that make the podcast possible. And it's going to be the guys over at monocreators.com. Mono has pedal boards, they have carbon flat boards, angled boards, a new slotted series pedal board they just released, ultra compact, thin power supplies, gig bags, backpacks, dual cases. They just have all sorts of great stuff. And the quality is amazing. I personally have multiple of these cases, as do the guys on here. I have a bunch sitting to my right now of board builds to do, a bunch of the mono smalls and stuff. Great company, great quality, especially nowadays. You're looking for quality over quantity. These are the guys, but you can get more quantity when you use our discount code Chairmen to get 10% off. So go use that code CHAIRMEN, 10% off. Get good quality and more quantity with our discount. So check them out and you won't be disappointed. The next are going to be the guys over at the BTPA, or best known as Besttronics. I say Best Brad because Brad seems to simply be the best. And watching him and the guys build all these awesome looms for Metallica or fly racks for some of my favorite bands are fun to watch. I definitely fangirl over. Pastor of Muppets, absolutely. I fangirled over their most recent rack build they did for the band Beartooth, which I'm a huge fan of. So I'm always rolling all over their stuff, regardless if I do this every day. They also have a discount code, Dutch Airs, the guys over in Chicago, DACHAIRS, for 10% off. Go check them out, get some connectors. Dutch Airs. You won't be disappointed. Check them out. Go get some new audio connectors, power cables, start building. You won't be disappointed. I'll throw it back to you, Mason.
All right. Well, one thing I was thinking about that's kind of along these lines, and I've frequently talked about this company with a lot of reverence, is Exotic. And I noticed that Exotic will do things, I'm thinking in particular about the RC Booster, where they would do a Scott Henderson version because Scott Henderson wanted some sort of EQ or something about it changed that was slightly different from the norm. Not like a whole redesign, but just slight difference.
Yeah, it's like an extra gain stage or something like that, right?
Well, I think initially it was before there was a second foot switch option on an RC Booster. It was a single foot switch. And I think it was just, again, either an EQ or something that was a really minor change. Maybe didn't even require a different PCB. And I remember they did like a limited run. I don't remember how many it was, 1,000, something like that. And then after the 1,000, they then implemented that mod into all future RC boosters.
Oh.
And so they basically, released the special edition first, where it was concurrent with whatever the regular RC booster was. And then after they had sold through that group of however many, they then said, and these are all sold out. This was a limited edition. The color was different. It had his signature on it, et cetera. It had some special packaging. And they said, if you want to have this sound, we've actually implemented this on, all RC boosters moving forward, or they came out with a new revision, something like that. And I'm wondering how you guys feel about that. I think that, what worked for them about it was that I don't think it was a huge change. I also think that by selling out of their limited run, in it looking different, I think still created a differentiator where it didn't necessarily devalue the artist product by implementing the change as kind of the standard moving forward in the RC booster in this case. I feel like they may have done that with a few other products that were signature products as well. I'm wondering how you feel about that as an or sort of like a second step to, let's say, because, and I know Two Rock kind of had done some stuff like that in relationship to the John Mayer amp, where like they didn't make the John Mayer amp, but if you got the Crystal or whatever it was at the time, like, that was basically the John Mayer amp, or now I don't know what they call it, but they do have something that is sort of resembling that. I don't know if it's traditional. I'm not sure about all the naming of their stuff, but companies have been known to do that. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I like it in the sense that let's take the RC booster where there's an EQ change. And we'll call it that as for the example. Presumably that is very specifically done for the artist. They have come in saying, I like your pedal, but can you do this? Or can you tweak the mids to better suit my setup? I don't see an artist going to all that effort, then them making a run for the artist, 1,000 units.
Yeah.
And then the artist being like, no, that's garbage. Like, I'm not putting that on my board. Because they came to, Exotic. I don't see Exotic going out of nowhere to Scott Henderson and saying, hey, can we tweak the mids for you? Or can we tweak this little thing and then slap your name on it? Like, it doesn't seem logical to me. It seems like the other way is much more likely. So the fact that I would assume Scott Henderson for a while, or maybe, who knows, was using that tweaked version of the RC booster, and then Exotic got on the back of that and said, hey, if you want the same tweaks, if you like this sound, you can now get this pedal. I feel much better about that than him just never have being associated with Exotic in the past, saying he loves the product and then never actually uses it. I feel better about that at the end of the day, and I do like the limited run, as we've already covered.
What about adapting, though, the limited run to then... Obviously, the limited run looks a certain way, but then adapting that circuit to the production line. Do you have any qualms about that?
I mean, no, I don't personally. I think so long as the artist is wholeheartedly endorsing it, whether it even looks the same or not, but it's like, this is the tweaked circuit, this is the sound. I feel much better about that than just a blind endorsement.
What do you think?
I'm putting my boxing gloves today. I'm opposite. Like how I feel about it. If it's a signature run of 100 and then it becomes normal production, no. But I think if it is a staple version 1 or say RC booster, and then they reach out to Scott, and I don't even know him, so great. I honestly, you could hurt me for not knowing who that exactly is, but great. I don't know who he is. I've heard of his name. But I think if they reached out to him and or he reached out, hey, love your pedal, but let's do these things. I don't think it doesn't bother me as much. I think I would rather it be like RC Booster, Scott, inspired mod or something. Like when you reached out to RJM. And
so you're saying you've not heard of Scott Henderson?
Oh, you missed all that. Wow. I'm sorry. I did not realize my video was gone. I do apologize. So I haven't heard of Scott. So I would see it more as like if he reached out and said, hey, I have these ideas. Let's do this. If they did something like, hey, the RC booster, whatever, Scott and Henderson inspired, or like when you reached out to RJM, hey, I think we should do a 1 meg input for this. So you guys did that special run of them. That was great. And I loved it. I think it's a great mod. They did not make it a permanent thing. It was a Vertex, basically,
Although interestingly enough, with Fender, they made it 1 meg.
Did they?
Yeah,
I see. Okay. So Fender and RJM, yeah. So, but like that, it's that kind of the same kind of thing. They adopted the idea and they did a run of it or they did something, I think that's fine. But I think it gets murky when, like we were just talking about, when they do a signature pedal and then they adopt that signature pedal into like their new version. They just call it the V2 or V3. That's just like.
So you don't like that.
Then,
So like, let's say for example, with Andy's Muse driver.
Yeah.
Let's just say that they decided that they're going to now they've sold the first 1,000 and moving forward, it's now just going to be the regular Muse driver, but it's going and it's not going to have the same look as Andy's, but it's going to have the same, sort of tweak. I guess it's not exactly a parallel because the Muse driver wasn't a pre-existing product that they had.
Actually, what they the fat mod that they did with Andy was a limited run, and then people loved it so much that
it became part of the fat. It became the fat mod, the stock fat mod moving forward.
Yeah. So like they came out with the Andy Timmons fat mod. Like Andy Timmons signed like the whole big event on it. People loved it so much. It was a limited run, and then they were like, everyone loved it so much. So then they redesigned to do the Muse. From what I've been told, if I'm wrong, I apologize, Robert Keeley. From what I have been told, that's what happened.
And they redesigned their enclosure.
Yeah, and they redesigned the enclosure to fit all their new scape of all their enclosures, like that kind of stuff. So like I think when it gets into that where it's pressed 500, but then that becomes a normal stock run pedal, that gets like I just said, it diminishes, it depreciates the value of that said product, especially all these people that maybe came out to the event, came and watched the video, talked to Andy, had that pedal signed. And yeah, they could do the same thing and have Andy sign, the Muse driver or anything. But like, then you get the people on good old social media that'd be like, well, I have the Muse driver too. Oh, okay, well, you don't have to. Like, it just starts arguments, and I think that's annoying. So that's my take on.
I don't think that dilutes the value of the original run. Because you very clearly, if there's a new look, you very clearly are one of the first. You're an early adopter.
That's true.
And that's where, I would disagree with that. That would be my right hook.
That is.
I'm going to call it. That was a TKO.
Take it.
Okay.
That was. I do agree with you. I still don't like tube scooters.
I also don't know boxing. I hope I used TKO correctly. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
That's when you shoot the puck through the goalpost, right?
That's it, in the basket. Yes.
Yeah,
good.
Great. You scored into the basket.
And then you knock it off the Zamboni. Good. All right, Mason.
Well, I think that's kind of the scope of the discussion today. My sort of wrap-up thoughts are, I don't have any issues with signature products as a consumer of guitar gear. If it sounds good, I don't care whose name's on it. I think from a business standpoint, it can be difficult. I think the benefit that most brands get is they get association with an artist, and they're like, oh, Andy Timmons uses that, and I like Andy Timmons, so let me check out some other Keeley offerings. So there's like this bonus of the association that is helpful to brands. I think the challenge for a lot of brands is, how do you maintain relevancy over time once you've saturated an artist audience? That's always challenging. And we've seen companies either deliberately or just by happenstance sort of create alternative ways to brand their products, where we talked about the Silver Sky or the Fiore, where they're not, they are artist products, but they are not putting that artist name as in your face in the branding of it. So you're not seeing John Mayer plastered all over it, or you're not seeing Mark Lettieri plastered all over it. And that can have an advantage in enrolling maybe non-John Mayer fans into using a Silver Sky. They're looking for a high quality Strat style, or somebody who's never heard of Mark Lettieri in purchasing a Fiore. So there are great advantages in that. Also in the way that Two Rock does things, where they set a finite amount that they're going to make. They make that amount, and then they may adapt other circuits that are very similar but don't look the same, or not artist endorsed products. But if you don't jump on that limited run, you're not going to be part of the in crowd that gets this particular signature product.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about the cash grab thing. and or the associations that are for products that are in no way related. And I mentioned the fictitious product of the Carlos Santana signature flanger as an example of not one that exists in reality, but but we've seen sort of an analog of that in existence in the marketplace. Any final thoughts from you, Brian, on signature gear before we wrap up?
I would just say, be open to different, artists because, or the pedals. Like if you're in one genre, but then the artist that comes out with signature pedal is in a different genre, try it out. And that's the thing. The thing is like guitar pedals, you can make it your sound. If you know the tone you want, the sound you want, try it. You'd be really surprised. Like I got a Boss DS1. The sound actually pretty decent, or a Metal Zone. And I looked at my coworker and I were like, why does that sound really good? Because we knew what our ears liked. We knew how to dial it in. So, be open to the option. Obviously if there's a limited run of a next 2 rock amp, obviously you got to go buy it. But just like, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think all this is so fun to talk about. We can talk about this stuff for days. The fact that we get to sit here for an hour and talk about this kind of stuff is cool. And it also just allows people, because we all work very hard for our money. We work a lot of hours. We spend more time at work than we do at home, to be honest. So like you spend more time working to play that one gig. So like, do the research, as I always say. It's your money. Spend it the way that you want it. Feel free to take inspiration and advice from us or people on YouTube. We're not always right. We may not agree. I don't like tube screamers. That's my thing. But you may like your tube screamer. So do your research. Had fun doing it. That's what I would say. And
Brian,
also,
last
if you
thought.
have
$1 sushi buffets, yes or no?
I hate sushi, so absolutely not.
I
do not.
Where have you had sushi? This is the question.
I just don't like it in general.
He's made up his mind.
I have made up my mind.
But when you guys are coming here to Oakland, I've already booked the sushi place. What are we going
with
to do,
you,
Brian?
I will have a water. I will take a water.
Triple filtered. I think they filter it through sashimi and seaweed as well at the sushi restaurant. Yeah. So Brian will really enjoy it.
If it's not triple filtered, I send it back.
Good office reference.
They use 3 tube socks. They pour it through 3 tube socks, and that's it.
One thing we didn't cover, Mason, which we could do super quick, is if you've ever done, I'm curious if you've ever done an artist endorsement. I've had one experience with it where it was blatantly an artist endorsed product, which was with Mateus Sato. We did a run of white underfacers and he signed them all. And it was a limited run. So we had, I think from memory, it was years ago, 50 units. We paid Mateus a cut, which would have been, again, it was a while ago, somewhere between 5 and 10%. And it actually went really well. And I still see them pop up, now and again and all that. But that was I've only ever done it once. Excuse me.
I've done a signature run. Did you guys know about that?
Tell us.
I did two products. One's turning 9 this year, and one just turned 6. They're my kids.
One of one.
So that's all I got. One girl, one boy. Those are my signature products.
Not for sale.
Not for sale.
To be clear. Yes.
Limited run. Never happening again.
Yeah. Have you? I think they filter it through sashimi and seaweed as well at the sushi restaurant. Yeah. So Brian will really enjoy it.
If it's not triple filtered, I send it back.
Good office reference.
They use 3 tube socks. They pour it through 3 tube socks, and that's it.
One thing we didn't cover, Mason, which we could do super quick, is if you've ever done, I'm curious if you've ever done an artist endorsement. I've had one experience with it where it was blatantly an artist endorsed product, which was with Mateus Sato. We did a run of white underfacers and he signed them all. And it was a limited run. So we had, I think from memory, it was years ago, 50 units. We paid Mateus a cut, which would have been, again, it was a while ago, somewhere between 5 and 10%. And it actually went really well. And I still see them pop up, now and again and all that. But that was I've only ever done it once. Excuse me.
I've done a signature run. Did you guys know about that?
Tell us.
I did two products. One's turning 9 this year, and one just turned 6. They're my kids.
One of one.
So that's all I got. One
Yep.
girl, one boy. Those are my signature products.
Not for sale.
Not for sale.
To be clear. Yes.
Limited run. Never happening again.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you